Just connecting. Hello, everyone. This is Sergio Marrero, and we are here at RBL1 Live with Sergio Rodriguez, who is founder and CEO of ToDoolie. Thanks for joining us, Sergio.
Yep, happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you. I told my colleague that we were having another Sergio on tonight, so he said two Sergios in one place. I don't know if he can handle it, but I'm ready to bring it to him. So thanks for joining us tonight. For those that don't know Sergio, he is a graduate of Wayne State University. Actually, has his degree in biomedical physics. Before he ended up going down the MBA path part way, and we'll cover some of that, and eventually ended up being CEO and founder of ToDoolie. So thanks again for joining us tonight. A startup that has raised over 2.7, just about 2.7 million, and just closed a $1.5 million round. So congrats on that. And if you can share with the audience a little bit, what is ToDoolie?
Yeah, so ToDoolie is the easiest way to hire young people from within your metropolitan area for help with outdoor unskilled tasks. And what outdoor unskilled means is things like raking leaves, pulling weeds, setting mulch. In other words, jobs you can do yourself, but you don't feel like doing, or you don't have enough time to actually do yourself.
Got it. And how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, so ToDoolie is actually an evolution of my personal experience. I moved to the US when I was 12 years old. I moved from Chile. And one of the ways that I generated money when I was in high school and then later in college was actually knocking on doors and raking leaves, or doing manual work for suburban homes. When I went to school, undergrad, I was under the F1 visa. And under the F1 visa, I didn't qualify for FAFSA financial aid. And I couldn't get a loan because I needed a US citizen to actually co-sign for me on a loan. And I just didn't have that level of social capital. So what I chose to do was to continue to do this type of work, rake leaves, pull weeds, and essentially work for my neighbors, generating cash, and paid my way through college while I studied biomedical physics. So I actually graduated debt-free by being able to make this money on my own terms, on my own schedule, and was able to obviously get a highly technical degree at the same time.
Amazing. And what can you talk a little bit about that shift from you studied biomedical physics? What inspired the shift from biomedical physics to running a startup that enables people to, find part-time work, but also find part-time workers to do, to do this skilled labor?
I'll try to keep that answer short because it is sort of a journey. But when I was 8 years old in Chile, I grew up watching this show called Cirugías de Cuerpo y Alma, which translates to Surgery of the Body and Soul. And it was a show about this plastic surgeon who showed how reconstructive surgery for people who didn't have the means to do it earlier on in their lives, how it changed their lives, how it changed their appearance, not just physically, but how their lives were changed as a whole. For example, web fingers, cleft palates, things that in the US get taken care of very early on, like soon after you're born. But in countries, South American countries, a country like Chile, sometimes in poorer areas, like those things go unattended for many, many years. And I was very inspired by that show and decided I'm going to be a pediatric reconstructive surgeon. So I decided that when I was 8 years old. Then I moved to the US, went to high school here. I signed up for all the sort of pre-med high school classes. And then I went to school and then I was pre-med. And I studied a degree that I believe aligned with the pre-med requirements. So I studied biomedical physics with the intent to actually go to medical school to become a surgeon. And it turns out that in order to pay for this degree, I had to do ToDoolie-like jobs. And when I graduated, my girlfriend was actually the one who said, Sergio, since you and I have been dating, you won't start talking about this app idea. All you talk about is this app idea. So she said, why not, take a year off, take a little bit of time off for med school and explore this entrepreneurial side of you, or stop talking about this app idea. So those were my options. And, I listened to her, and what was supposed to be a summer project turned into a year off, which turned into now over 4 years. And it's by far, by far one of the hardest, but also the most rewarding things I've ever done. I realized I'm an entrepreneur, right? And I didn't know that about me. And now I know that it's not just a character trait, but it's more or less, my vocation and what I will continue to do for the rest of my professional career.
That's awesome. And you talked, we were talking a little bit before we came on that, it isn't just, can you talk a little bit about the vision for what you're building? People aren't just getting part-time work. What do you intend for ToDoolie to be?
Yes. So our vision is to become the largest professional development pipeline in the United States. And what that means, our market thesis is that in order for a gig economy company to be successful at scale, for a on-demand labor company to be successful at scale, there has to be value given to the supply side, to the labor, that is actually greater than the revenue, or the GMV, which is a technical term, actually generated per transaction. And we believe the way to achieve that is by building a professional pipeline on top of what is, a marketplace. And what a pipeline is a way to develop our labor, essentially graduate them out of our platform to pursue other professional development opportunities. Like it could be a coding bootcamp, or it could be a pre-med program, or maybe they're into the arts or music. So it could be specific partnerships with some of those programs. And it's essentially creating a pathway for them where they can go from pulling weeds to actually doing what they want to do. Because what we know that a lot of our competitors don't know is that young people don't actually want to be gardeners. They have bigger ambitions, right? They're like me. They're doing it as a means to an end, but maybe they want to be a pediatric reconstructive surgeon. And we understand that no better than anyone else. So that's why we're building our platform with that in mind.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. And in I know during your journey, like did you always start as a part-time labor focused on doing like physical labor or doing lawns, or where can you talk a little bit about the pivots and evolution from like how you started to where it is now?
Yeah, so ToDoolie itself, I don't believe we've necessarily pivoted much from the original idea, because again, I have over 15 years of experience. So I came into this startup when I already had cooked up most of the product already in my head. And like my girlfriend said, I've been talking about this for many, many years. So in a way, the customer discovery process had been done for a very long time. So I wouldn't say we've had any major pivots, but what we have done is we have focused more, and we have really refined who our customer persona is on both the helper side and the client side. That doesn't mean we haven't pivoted. It just means ToDoolie itself as a core business model has not pivoted. But during the pandemic, we had to do some creative things. Like, for example, our business went, our revenue dropped more than 80% in less than a week. And this was in March of last year. We were essentially out of business for most of the summer of 2020. So we were faced with a choice that we had to make, where we had to figure out a way to generate revenue as a startup that was running out of money, and we weren't in a position where we could actually raise venture capital. So we took the product we had built, we added route optimization to the app, and then we ended up getting some of our clients to bake bread and some of our helpers to deliver fresh baked bread to other people's homes. And that was pretty fun. So we did that for a little bit over a month. We're able to recoup some of the revenue, but bread was more of a trend than an actual, sustainable business. And we were able to ride that trend until it died off. And then after that, we jumped sort of on another trend or other opportunity, which was this idea of home pods for learning, where people would sort of have their kids within a group, and then they would teach them skills, or they would go over their class material together. And what we realized is there was a lot of inequity in that particular space, because most of the people who were podding were very privileged families that were able to afford to hire a private tutor and do that. So we actually built a software platform that was open source, that most public schools could use to coordinate podding amongst their peers, so that people without the means could actually have access to pods. It turned out to be 100% nonprofit and 100% open source. So we just open sourced it and released it into the stratosphere, and then had to eventually go back to a business that made money. So we ended up getting a bridge round led by Precursor Ventures, we were able to refocus back on ToDoolie because we realized, ToDoolie there's a real market here. It's just that it's a weird time to be doing that type of work. And we very quickly bounced back, started growing 25% month over month, and then we're able to close this just most recent round.
Amazing. And for those that don't know Precursor and Charles Hudson, and how did you find them? How did they find you? Can you talk a little bit about how you made that happen?
Yes. So I believe that one of the most important things that any entrepreneur, particularly entrepreneurs from underserved communities or untraditional backgrounds, one of the number one things that you can do is create access for yourself. And not a lot of people have access to Charles Hudson and Precursor Ventures. And even though Precursor Ventures, just like any other VC firm, they have a form or an email process where you can cold email them. And most of them say they look through every email. At the end of the day, there is a bias towards warm introductions. It's just the way that the world works. So what I did a little bit over a year before I met Charles Hudson at Precursor, I knew that Stacy Brown-Philpott, the former CEO of TaskRabbit, was doing a keynote in Detroit. She was doing it virtually, but it was an opportunity for people to go there and ask questions. And I raised my hand and I essentially said, "Hey, Stacy, I know you're incredibly busy, but I'm building a platform within your space. And there's no better person in this country that I could talk to regarding this company." This was when we were still bootstrapping before we had raised any money. And my question was sort of in front of everyone. I put her on the spot. I asked her, "Hey, could you give me 10 minutes of your time, after this event?" So she had to agree. And she said, "Okay, figure it out with my assistant." They gave me 10 minutes as I asked for the following quarter. And then I knew my job for those 10 minutes was to get another 10 minutes. So, I went into those 10 minutes knowing that I had to pitch my heart out, make sure that I would get a little bit more of her time. And then those next 10 minutes turned into quarterly meetings. And then after a year or so of quarterly meetings, I asked her officially to be my advisor and join our advisory board. And, after she did that, she was very open to make introductions for us. And one of the first intros she made was actually to Precursor Ventures.
Awesome. That's a great story. Talking about like relationship building and dedication. Can you share more? I think a lot of people don't know. You started in Detroit. You based ToDoolie in Detroit. Why Detroit? And can you share a little bit about the uniqueness of that startup ecosystem?
Yeah. So I have a lot of love for the city of Detroit. My family moved to Detroit in 2004. I've been in Detroit now really most of my life, and I just recently actually relocated to Chicago. And I have, like I like to say, a foot in Detroit, a foot in Chicago. And that's because our business is actually headquartered in Detroit. Most of our employees are out of Detroit. But one of my co-founders and I did make the move to Chicago for several reasons. But that's why we're in Detroit. So I went to Wayne State, and when it came to actually testing out the business and trying things out, because we were bootstrapping, it was just the most convenient place to do it. I already knew the market. I knew every neighborhood. I already had a list of clients. I already knew how to do the job, and I was familiar with the seasonality and the type of work that we could do within the Detroit market. So it just made the most sense to actually start there and have our proof of concept there. Now that we've raised a little bit more money and we've gotten more experience, in retrospect, maybe we could have tried another market earlier, but Detroit seemed to be the most accessible for us at the stage where we were at the time.
And then now, we met in Chicago, in the Chicago startup ecosystem here, and then you recently moved to Houston. Can you talk about why the shift to Houston and why you're bringing ToDoolie to Houston?
Yeah, so the move to Chicago and the move to Houston were actually different reasons. So I talked about access. I moved to Chicago for access. I moved to Chicago for access to people like Amanda Leonard, CEO of Jellyvision, or one of my investors, Christopher Deutsch from Lofty Ventures. So I moved there to meet people that could help us get to the next level. I'm in Houston now because we're launching Houston next month. So I'll be here for the next 4 months. I got an Airbnb here where I'm staying, and I'll essentially be here building connections, hiring the next ToDoolie helpers, and building a local team here. And then I'll actually be in Atlanta in March of next year. But I'm in Houston temporarily, I plan to make the best out of my time and experience here. But I do plan to actually go back to the Midwest as soon as I'm done launching these new markets.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll miss you in Chicago. You're also, and we talked a little bit about this, starting in, I felt like you knew you wanted to go the business route all along a little bit, because you did focus on biomedical physics, and then you started your MBA. What can you share more about we talked about, you made the decision to jump to Techstars Chicago and leave your MBA program. Can you talk about that decision of MBA or startup, and what led you to decide that?
Yeah, so I'm going to start that question off by saying I don't believe I'm qualified to really properly answer that question. But what I will say is, when somebody talks about an MBA program, it actually matters what MBA program, right? There's a big difference between an MBA at Wayne State and an MBA at Stanford. And that's just like the reality. I believe the biggest value of an MBA program is the network. Again, it's access, is who you're going to be in the classroom with, who you're going to meet, because those people will be with you for the rest of your professional career. And, I love Wayne State. Wayne State is very, dear to my heart. And because of Wayne State is that I'm here today. A lot of the help and support that they've given me. But at the end of the day, there is something to be said about the network that this sort of elite universities have at Stanford, Kellogg, Northwestern, or even Harvard, the MBA program, right? So I would say if I had an opportunity to attend an Ivy League school for an MBA, I probably would have completed the program. Because I was faced between making a choice of going through the Techstars Accelerator program, which has a 2% acceptance rate, and Harvard is a 3% acceptance rate. So in a way, it was like a very competitive program, which felt to me like my version of a good MBA. I decided to do that instead of the MBA at Wayne State. Now, this is not to say that an MBA at Wayne State is not valuable. Absolutely. If you can get that professional development, it'll boost your career path. Like if you're working at Ford and you need to learn sort of management skills, I think there's something to be said about the value there. But at least for me as an entrepreneur, as a first-time founder, building a two-sided marketplace, a technology company, what I needed more than anything was not necessarily finance or management classes. I actually just needed access to capital, and I needed talented mentors. And that's what I got through the Techstars Chicago program.
Awesome. And can you talk about that? It sounds like, what is it? Techstars Chicago, was that I would say a different type of pivot, but a true accelerator. You've raised now almost $3 million. Like what was that? Can you talk about like what were some of the things you did during the way that got you to that point?
Yeah, so we applied to Techstars 5 times before we got into the program. So we didn't get in right away. We applied for 3 years. We applied to different programs in different cities. We actually flew to different cities to meet with the managing directors in person and still got rejected. And this happened, for the first 3 years of the business until we actually eventually got into the Techstars Chicago program. At that point, we had built a reputation and there was sort of enough data on the ToDoolie team that, at that point, people were actually very excited to have us join the cohort. But it was not free of challenges and difficulties. When we joined the Techstars program, we were actually getting very close to actually running out of money. So the timing was perfect. Now, I would tell any founder out there that money is not a good reason to actually join the Techstars program, or really any accelerator for that reason. If I could go back in time, I would do the program again, because what we got from the Techstars Chicago program, which is something that doesn't run out because money runs out, again, is access to people who are very well connected, people who are experienced, who are able to give you advice and save you time and actually save you money with some of the things that they can say or advise you on. So that's the biggest value of Techstars. If, say, I went and did another startup in the future, would I go to Techstars again? The answer is actually different. It's no, I would not. And I would not do it because I have the access already to the Techstars network, right? I would maybe consider another accelerator program. or no accelerator program at all, because I feel like now I'm at a point where I build a good enough network that I can actually rely on that network for the rest of my professional career. But I would recommend or encourage any first-time founder to really hustle themselves into one of these programs, because the amount of access you will get in a short amount of time is absolutely invaluable.
And no, that's great advice for early stage founders trying to launch. What's some of the biggest challenges that have that you feel that you've gone through? You said you almost ran out of money, that being one. What were some of those big hurdles that you had to get over?
Yeah, so immigration is one of them. Financial stability is another one, or financial literacy for that matter. And then the other one would be operational excellence. And the first one, immigration, again, after they're an F1 visa, in this country, you cannot own a business that you work for, nor can you work for a business that you own under the existing immigration policies. So we had to get very creative, and I essentially had to work for the university while staying in school as a student and building a business that I could not get paid to build. So that was the first stage of the company. And then when we got into the Texas program and I was nominated for the Cranes 20 in their 20s, plus the money that we had raised, I was able to actually qualify for the O visa, which is given to people with extraordinary ability. And when I got the O visa, that is actually the first time I was able to go on payroll for my company. And that in itself is that was a very big challenge. There were a lot of investors who actually took a bet on me before that had happened, even though that is actually a big risk. Immigration is a risk in many ways for when you're backing a founder. But those people believe that I would be able to figure it out. And, I did. So that was, one thing that was very difficult for my team, for myself, even for some of our investors. The second one was financial stability / financial literacy. And that's because in the environment that I was raised, I was not coached or taught financial literacy. And there's nothing wrong with my parents in that sense. It's also how they were raised, coming from South America and now coming into a world where we live in a capitalist society and there's credit cards and there's all these other things that unless you learn that from your parents, you probably won't learn that. It's genetic, right? And it shouldn't be, but it's passed down from one parent to their kids and then to their kids. And it's a generational thing. So being able to actually get mentors and learn how to build my finances and how to operate a company was something that I had to overcome as well. One of the biggest mistakes I made as a first-time founder was not paying myself enough and thinking that being scrappy was the way to do it and all that other stuff. And then I realized that as I was racking up debt and I was, putting myself in positions where I couldn't afford my next meal, that was just not the way to build a company. So you definitely want to pay yourself enough, not just to make ends meet, but actually to take vacation and to enjoy your life and be happy and take care of your mental health. Super important that you have actually enough money to do that. And then the last challenge, which is operational excellence. As a first-time founder, there are a lot of things that I just didn't know. For example, I did not know how important it was to take care of the team. I intuitively did that because I believe I'm a good person and I care about people and I'm very friendly. But I didn't know how important it was to actually take care of the team in the same way that you take care of your marketing efforts or your or the way you build product, where you actually have to be very intentional about ensuring that you're building a good team culture, that you're investing in your employees and you're maybe giving them access to courses or sending them to conferences and actually creating a work environment where people actually want to be there. So I just assumed those things just kind of happen naturally. But now I realize that is not the case. You actually have to put in a lot of work into it. And as the team grows, and now we have a 10% team, and hopefully by later next year, it'll be a 20+% team, that work only becomes, more challenging. So that was another lesson that I learned.
Amazing. I want to ask, and this is more specific to the gig economy, with more platforms like TaskRabbit, like Lyft, like Uber. Can you talk about the importance or what's your position on just support and like kind of welfare ecosystem, right? A lot of these individuals, they may come from other countries, they may work and not have access to healthcare or other benefit. What do businesses need to do, or what do we need to do as a country to better support this the trend of gig work that's been here and and is going to continue?
Yes, the gig economy is here to stay, and we are very early actually into the gig economy. Now we're seeing what I've been calling the gig economy 2.0. We had the 1.0 happen in 2008 after the recession. And now we had sort of this fabricated recession due to COVID that has very much contributed to a lot of people questioning, hey, why am I, working my butt off making somebody else rich when I could build my own business and start a marketplace and do that? So we're seeing a lot of marketplaces that are sprouting out of the pandemic, and the ability to work remote, and all of these software as a service platforms that are cheaper than ever now and more accessible than ever. So the barriers to entry for somebody to actually start a gig economy business in a field that they have expertise on, like, for example, barbershops on demand, or nails on demand, or like you name it, like all these trades that people have expertise on but haven't been transferred into the tech industry yet. We're definitely going to see a boom in that. And I think the most recent valuation of Thumbtack, which was over $3 billion, only shows that. And that happened, like several months ago, that they came out with that announcement that, there is there's a lot of growth in gig work, right? In independent contractors and in that type of stuff. Now, do I agree with the practices that the gig economy has been executing on for the last decade? I actually absolutely not. I think the gig economy was a really good example back in 2008 and 2012 of like what could be done with platforms like DoorDash, right? TaskRabbit, Uber and Lyft are great examples. Airbnb is actually one of the most interesting ones from my perspective because they have a very unique model. But what I believe is missing from most of these platforms is that professional development aspect, because what we are seeing now is almost a rebellion, right, from the labor saying, you know what, we should make more money. We should have more flexibility. We should be able to pick our schedules and pick who we want to work for. And if that's not the case, then we need to be classified as full-time employees, and we should have benefits. And I think that is actually a very well-deserved, backlash for the gig economy and those businesses, because I think it was a gross oversight that they didn't have, for me, they didn't necessarily have the care to really see that their labor is the heart of their business. And if they're able to prioritize that, and I think some of them are noticing that and they're seeing those trends, then I think the gig economy will only just continue to grow and become more and more valuable over time.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of work that can be done in that space. So for those of us that I know we're coming close to time, if you could share with the audience what's next for ToDoolie.
Yeah, so we're launching Houston next month. I will be launching Atlanta in March, and we'll be heads down building product for that entire time as well. So growth, product. Most of our hiring was done already, but we are desperately looking for a senior full stack developer. So if anyone here is listening and they know someone who might be interested in that opportunity, please let me know. So heads down building product, growing into new markets, and actually building the first iteration of what will become the professional development platform. So that hasn't happened yet. We're building an MVP of it before we raise our next round. And that will really, put some tangible numbers to what we're trying to do. Not just generating cash, right? Not just the hire somebody for X amount of hours and have a transaction, but actually, how do you quantify the results of developing a person professionally, right? And being able to show that to investors in the next round is going to be a key milestone for us.
Excellent. Well, Sergio, it was a pleasure to have you. For those that are watching, this was Sergio Rodriguez, who's CEO and founder of ToDoolie. Please join us for future live streams of RBL1 Live, where we interview amazing VCs and CEOs like Sergio. So thanks again for coming on.